Hello, beautiful beginners. Welcome back to my Watercolors for Beginners playlist. This is going to be lesson 2, and honestly, I think the most important lesson of all of them, because once you truly understand water control and feel confident with it, everything else is cake. Everything else in watercolors begins to totally flow and make so much more sense. So today we're just going to step into really, I think, the heart of watercolor. How much water to use, how to create gorgeous, effortless washes, and how to actually apply those principles in your paintings, not just know them in your head. How do I use these? How do I apply them? So we're going to cover wet on wet, wet on dry, gradients, and the perfect water ratio. Plus, I'm then going to show you how to use the techniques to make your florals look really soft and flowing and full of gentle life, like you know exactly what you're doing, and you do. So let's get started. And remember, you are an artist. You can absolutely do this. I'm here to support you, to hold space for your creativity, and just show you that it can be so fun, so simple, so joyful. And I'm going to share my number one tip, and I'm going to share it in a beautiful, simplified way that makes that water control feel really easy, almost like you're not even doing the work, like your brushes and your pigment are taking over. And that's what's happening when you build that confidence and muscle memory. So let's paint together, let's trust the process, and let your own beautiful style unfold. You take creative license. I hope this gives you so much more confidence with your water control. I know it will. And when you trust yourself, you're just going to let go. You're going to play, you're going to have fun, and I promise you everything else is going to flow. So keep practicing, keep playing, and know that your art is coming along exactly as it's meant to. Remember, you're intuitive, you're artistic, you're creative, and you are so capable of beautiful watercolor art. I can't wait to see all the things you do. Hop over to Patreon to show your photos, and I am sending you so much creativity, so much love, my friends. I can't wait to share this lesson too with you. A little mantra for you. You can say to yourself, I trust my art. I trust my hands. I trust my creativity, and I trust where all of this is taking me. And I am an artist. I'll see you soon. Hello, friends. Today I'm painting some watercolor flowers, but I wanted to use this little exercise to also show you some tips I've always used in water control. The main thing you want to really watch, and then this was really important to me. So it's one thing to learn water control. I pulled some of these out from kind of my vault. And what I always appreciated is which just didn't usually happen, when a teacher could show, okay, here's the technique, then I always wanted to know, like, well, where do I apply that? How do I use that technique? I know it's really common, and I'm actually going to do that. Start with this next technique and the way I show it to you, but then I'm going to show you how I would apply it, because I love florals, how I would apply it. So I hope that's going to help you, because like I said, I know for years I was like, okay, thanks for that technique, you know, but how do I use that in a floral in particular, because that's what I paint. So the first thing I want to show you, by the way, I'm using Artisto pads. You know, I absolutely love these. The 9x12s are on Amazon, and actually today, which is July 8th, 2025, it's Prime Week. Prime, I think, 4 or 5 days. So make sure you grab it. I'll go ahead and grab my link and put it down below. Thank you in advance if you use those links. I do get a few pennies. But anyway, so let's start. I'm also using my 8 round, but you know, I love the Velvet Touch, guys. I've had this brush for probably 8 years, and look at the tip still. Now I take care of my brushes. I make sure and store them, when they're wet, like horizontal, so they dry. I always reshape them when I'm done into that beautiful little point. And I also, use a brush cleaner once a month or something like that. And with the Velvet Touch, it's got this really great velvety handle, and it's short. I like that because I feel like I have more control if I hold up here near the ferrule. And then my brushes are designed a bit like those. I think these might come out again this summer, 2025. So I'll put the link if you want to sign up to be notified when my brushes are linked. You'll get a box of 5. Let me show you the box they come in. And honestly, if you're not interested in the supplies, you just want to set the technique, that's fine. This is the box, though, that my 5 brushes will come in. You get this little card. It's really pretty. I actually, darn it, I took all my brushes out, but you get 5 brushes in there. An angle, a cat's tongue, my favorite round, and they're all really snappy. So, by the way, if you don't need the supplies, you can just fast forward. All right, well, let's hop in. I've got my 2 containers of water, really important, beginners, when you are starting out, to have a wash water and a rinse water, so you're not mixing and muddying up your colors. And then I've also got my towel here. As you can see, I was just painting with pink, so it's a little bit, has a little bit of pink in it. And let's go ahead and get started. So the biggest thing in watercolors is water control, because you're working with water. The pigments, as you see, I'm using here my Lang set. This is Paul Rubens. Love, love, love. I've been using these for several years. Can't recommend them enough. They're just so creamy and beautiful, and I think their choice of colors they put in here is fabulous for me. I mean, look at the greens. These are my favorite. Purples and red violets. You've got your reds, oranges. I just love them, and they have a lot of neutral colors. So this is truly my favorite palette. If you watch me, you know that, because I talk about them all the time. And they're really reasonable. They're like, matter of fact, I need to check. They might go on sale for Prime Day. But even if not, they're maybe $21, something like that. Okay, so the typical way artists, and how I learned, always show water control is by the washes. But what I want to do first is, I'm always talking about, too much water, not enough water. What you want to do is, I'm just going to get my brush wet, tap it off. So let's make 3 little circles of paint. So right now I've got a ton of water. So here is my wash water, rinse water. Now if I just go directly from here and put this water on my paper, there's puddles, it's pooling. I mean, there is a lot of water. Now, if I go into my paint, and I've got a lot of water on here, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go in here and basically, it's too much water, guys, because look, if I tilt my paper, it's just kind of going everywhere. Now, of course, if that's your thing and that's how you like to paint, then definitely paint like that. But right now, you've got a lot of puddling, pooling. If I was to go into this with a different color, let's say blue, darn, and go in there, it's going to, let me see if I can. Blue is pretty staining, guys, especially turkey blue. We love that color, don't we? So, it's just pulling up. It's not really flowing and spreading nicely. It's just sitting there in puddles. And this is going to take, look, even when I push on the paper, this is going to take forever to dry. So too much water. Now, if I go into my water, and then I'm scraping off gently my brush, and now I lay down a layer of water, but it's just shiny, you guys. If you can see this, I don't think you can. See that? It's just shiny. Oh, see, look at that. It's just puddling into a big, giant blob. That is a blob. So this one, it's just shiny. If I tilt my paper, no dripping. Now if I go into my red, pick up paint, tap, 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 and now I go in there, I've got a lot more control. Look at that. It's nice. There's no, I don't want to pick up my paper because this is going to puddle and pull and drip. But look at that. Now watch this. If I also go into that, let's put a little bit more. Might as well color in the whole thing here. And notice my paint is only going to go where my water is. So look at that. Isn't that nice? That's a nice wash. Nice, even, flat wash, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Very controllable, no puddles, no pulling. Now watch this. If I go into there now with this blue, let me get some of that. Tap, 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 not too much on my brush. Tap, tap, tap. And I tap in. I can still kind of control it. There's no puddles and pooling. And I use this, and I'm going to show you in a minute, a lot for my flowers. So that is shiny or damp in damp. And look at the beautiful blend I'm getting versus this big puddle. I'm going to soak some of that up because it's bugging me, and I can't do anything with my paper. So let's just soak that up. There we go. Okay, so we got that. Way too much water. This is just shine. So this is what we're going for. Now, you also can have, you know, think about the consistency of your paint. So if I go straight out of here, out of my pan, and I'm loading my brush, it's thick. That's like creamy. And I paint here. Number one, look at how dark that is. That's a dark value, which is great. I think, you know, it's important to know those values. I've almost got some dry brush there. So that is probably 90% pigment, maybe 10% water. Very thick, very dark and saturated, okay? So darkest value. Now, if I add a little bit of water, just a little swoosh, scrape it off. Now I go in and I've got this mid value, which is beautiful. And I always suggest in your paintings, make sure you have 3 different values of your colors. It just creates that depth. If you can see on the screen here, this is really popping out, right? This is maybe the mid ground. Now I'm going to go in, rinse my brush, scrape it off, and now I've got even a lighter value. So the lightest values are going to go towards the back. And this is going to be really transparent. It's great for layering and glazes. It's great for your backgrounds. So if you were doing a landscape, this would recede into the background. This would pop right out in front. So let me write down these. This one is about 50-50. And this one is going to be the reverse of that, about 90% water, 10% pigment. There we go. So those are 2 things with water control. This one, that is thick and creamy. You're going to have, wherever you put that paint, it's just going right there. Especially this is wet on dry. All of these are wet on dry, meaning we're going wet paint onto a dry surface. This was wet paint onto a wet surface. And we went into actually just wet water, and then we went into wet on wet, wet pigment, wet paint. That's already on the the paper. So wet in wet. Let me write that down. There you go. Okay, so we've got these in every painting. Like I said, you know, always have a little sheet handy that you can kind of play with these colors. If you look at my box here, I've got a variety of values. I've got a dark value down in the center and the petals that are in front. Then I've got kind of a mid value in here. Hopefully you can see this right here, mid value. Then I've got a very transparent light values, and that gives your paintings this beautiful depth. Okay, so I hope that helped. Now the big thing, how do I use, you know, let's do a wash. I'm going to show you the traditional wash that you see everybody share. So I've got my paint on my brush, and I'm going to say this is probably 75% pigment, 25% water. It's about in a little thinner than creamy. So let's just do a quick wash. And you want to get used to doing this because this is a way to blend your flower petals so they get maybe darker or lighter towards the base. So I've just got this nice flat wash, no puddles, remember, just shiny. Now I'm going to take my brush, swoosh, scrape, and I just start pulling down. One more swish, one more swish and scrape. So now I've got this light transition. Now for me, I'm like, okay, great. How do I use that? So if I was doing a flower petal, because that's my jam, guys, I would load my brush and let's paint, start our petal. There we go. And I've got this dark wash like we started up at the top. Now, I want to go in and I want to make it gradually get lighter. So swoosh, wipe my brush. Now, see that? Just like this. Wipe my brush, scrape, getting lighter and lighter. Wipe my brush, scrape, till I get to the top and it's light. So that would be, and you know, with a petal, a lot of times I don't need exactly a wash. So I'm gonna play with that a bit. Scrape, tap, before it dries too much. And like here, we just went back and forth, but here I'm gonna play with that. But that's my idea of how I would use these washes. And it's all, again, about that water control, getting used to playing with that water control. Now let's show, this is a really fun one. Something like this is combining two colors and kind of pulling them together in this beautiful gradient wash. Kind of like an ombre effect, right? So let's do it first, just the traditional way of showing you. So here's our red, back and forth, just nice and shiny, no, absolutely no puddles. There we go. Now, I want to mix yellow, so completely wash and rinse my brush. I want to make sure there's no red on there. See that? I tap it off, no red. Let's get some yellow in my pan here. Let me show that to you. There we go. Before that dries. And now I'm going to put the yellow at the bottom, and I'll show you how I'll use this in my flower. And now rinse my brush, scrape it off, and start moving towards that wash. And just touch into the bottom there. and kind of play with this a bit. And then get out of there, because you don't want to spend too much time in there because it's already starting to dry. If you want a little bit more of that, you can always tilt your page. But what I would normally do is just, you don't want to overwork this. That's a big, oopsie, I had red on my brush. And now that's about all the time I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave that to do its thing. Now, my question always, when I learned this in school, it's like, well, when am I ever painting squares? Like, show me how to apply this. So let's do this. Oops, I got my finger in there. Let's do the same thing if you're painting a leaf, a petal. So let's do a leaf. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to use a different color. So let's use that green. I'll just put that in my palette here. And this is not cream consistency, but about in the middle. So probably 50-ish, 50-ish, 50 water, 50 paint. There we go. Tap, tap, tap. Let's do a leaf. So point, press. I'm opening up. A little more paint on my brush. Point, press. Point, press. Get that leaf going. Now I want to add in some of my yellow. So let's grab that yellow. And again, this is all like water control, getting used to how much water should I be putting on my brush. That would be it for me. That is using the principle of a gradiated wash. Now, because I've got the good amount of water control, damp in damp, not a puddle, quickly I can go in here and I can even add a tiny bit of blue to the bottom there. Let's just do that. Not too much water on my brush. So tap, tap, tap. Don't want it too watery consistency. And I can even tap in down here. Now, if I do this in time, I can also move that around. Keep rinsing my brush. Now I'm just going to leave that. I could tap a tiny bit more of that blue in the bottom, but I don't have too much time to work with this. And look at that beautiful gradiated wash, because I have learned how much water to put on here. Now let me show you if I used a ton of water on my brush, which again, there's times where, you know, artists will use that and they use it very successfully. Let me get some more green, but I'm going to really load up on the water. So this is, if I tilted my palette, it's all over the place. So let me show you if I painted a leaf with this, all this water, I've got all these puddles, right? So here's, oh, you know what? I actually made that look like more of a leaf than a flower petal more than a leaf, didn't I? That's fine. So if I went into this now and I've got all these puddles. Now, when I would go in there with my yellow, let's put a lot of water in that one too. Now, because my brushes are snappier, they're not absorbing a ton of water. Now I'm trying to get this effect, but I've got so much water in there, it's just kind of creating big puddles. I don't have that control to blend and pull the paint around. Now, if I go in there with that blue and a ton of water, same thing. It's just creating a bunch of puddles and blobs. Now, when that dries, you know, it might dry interesting, but that's unworkable for me. I can't do anything with that. It's just a bunch of water, puddles everywhere. So again, you want to have that beautiful amount of water on your brush, tap, 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 and point. Let's actually make a leaf here. There we go. And I can go in there with my yellow. Now see, I had a bit of a puddle there. Let me grab that again. And I can work with my paint. It's not just a big puddle of water. I can kind of push it around. I can mix the two. I can play with it. It's nice to work with. Let's add just a tiny bit of that blue. Tap, tap, tap. I don't want that much water. Tap it in there, tap off my brush again, and I can move that around. See that? So tap, tap, tap. Don't want a ton of water on there. Now, if I want that to be a little bit darker, I just add a little paint to my brush. But I can work with all of this. Keep washing my brush for playing with that water control. And when this dries, it'll have this beautiful blend. Right now, this is just a giant puddle still. This has a nice blend. So I hope that helped a bit. Again, you know, I love to be able to tap in to the bottom of my petals. So if you have that right amount of paint, here's that red, just damp. Let's do that petal. Point press. And I've got that beautiful amount of water. It's just shiny. Now quickly, I can tap in to that blue, tap in the bottom. I had a little green in there, so it's turning a little dark. And I do this quite often. I might even do it a bit around the edges. Wipe off my brush. Kind of play with that. So see, I can play with it, and it's not just a puddle that I have no control over. So this will end up looking like this. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. And, you know, again, see this here? It's all pooling to one side. So when this dries, by the way, it's going to have a line here because it kind of pooled there. So when it dries, it's going to have this kind of funky line there. But when you have the right damp and damp, you can really move with it. I mean, I'm going to show you again. Look at the beautiful blending here. Just like this, just like this. And it's doing the same thing here and the same thing here. This here, it's just could be interesting, but it will dry funky, and it's not going to have that ombre type effect. All right, everybody, I hope that was helpful. Happy painting. This, I believe, is the most important technique and principle and exercise that you can do with watercolors to get used to how that feels, because this is the thing too that I want to add in. Here is a Princeton Neptune, really, really soft, you guys, which means a snappy brush is gonna, look at that, it snaps right into that point, but it also doesn't soak up as much pigment and water. This one, because it's so soft, I just dipped this one into, these are both 8s, by the way. I just dipped them both, let me do it again, into water. Look at how much fatter this one is because it's softer. It's really absorbing. So think about a dried out sponge. A dried out sponge, if you got it wet, it's kind of going to stay dry and it's going to be harder, crisper, kind of a weird metaphor. But if you had a sponge that's already really soft and pliable, when you put it in the water, it's really going to soak it all up. a little bit like that with the Neptune. So this brush, and I'm telling you this because in case you're using a different brush than me and getting a little different results, that's why. So I go in here now, and in order to pick up the right amount of water, I'm really gonna have to tap off my brush because look at all that puddling. So if I fill this brush, see that? The water's totally different. Here I have, the brush is so soft, it picked up way more water and pigment, and it's going to be easier to puddle and pool. This is a snappier, little bit stiffer brush, and it's not going to puddle and pool. So just keep that in mind if you're getting a little bit different results than me. If you have a soft brush, just tap it off more. If you have the stiffer brush, like the Velvet Touch or my brush, you're not going to be picking up as much, soaking up as much water and pigment. Okay? All right, everybody, have fun. And this is lesson 2 of my playlist series. I hope you're enjoying these. And let's keep having fun. I'll see you soon.